Thank you, gentlemen, for the intro. Welcome to the 39th edition of the Rick Fowler Show. Today is Wednesday, February 1st. You guys a little closer to the weekend. I know you got to be happy about this summer, so just stick around and wait to find out what the announcement is. It'll be tomorrow. So, all right, we're going to go to our first segment here, and this is this being Super Bowl week. The shiny trophy that these guys win is named after this guy that you're going to hear talking right here, Mr. Vince Lombardi, legendary coach of the Packers. His phrase is, winning is not a sometime thing. It's an all-the-time thing. It's everything. You don't win once in a while, and you don't do things right once in a while. You do them right all the time. Winning is a habit. That's right. You got to play with your heart. Winning is a fiber in your body. Is a habit. And this guy instilled it into his players. I would like to welcome our guest to the Rick Fowler Show. Caller, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hello, Rick. This is Brad Gillingham.
Brad Gillingham, welcome to the Rick Fowler Show.
Yes, thanks for having me on this afternoon.
No problem. I'm glad to have you. I'm glad you could find some time in your schedule. It's been a few months since we've talked. It's good to hear from you.
Yeah, always great talking with you, Rick.
Am I on speakerphone on your end?
Yes.
If you can, try picking up. It will help your sound and probably mine.
Okay.
Better?
Yeah, a little bit better.
All right, you're in stereo. So this week in history, going back to 1959, Vince Lombardi was hired as the Green Bay Packers coach and GM. We're going to take a look at the man who the Super Bowl trophy is named after, and specifically his years at Green Bay. So I do have Brad Gillingham on the line, who is the son of Gail Gillingham, who is a member of the Packers Hall of Fame. Was your dad surprised when he got inducted to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a real honor for him to be inducted, but he did have a very good career, and I think he somewhat probably, he was a very humble person, but I think he felt worthy of the induction. But yeah, he was very honored to be inducted into the Packer Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Now, he was from Madison, Wisconsin, is that right?
Well, initially, he was born in Madison, moved to farm country around Tomah, Wisconsin, and then his junior year, he moved to central Minnesota, Little Falls, Minnesota, which is a town of about 8,000 people along the Mississippi River. And that's where he, finished his high school career in Little Falls. And that's where we grew up. Our family, even the years when he played for Green Bay, we would live in Green Bay during the season. And then during the off-season, we'd move back to Little Falls.
Really? So that's that.
My dad was a very quiet, small-town kind of guy. Grew up around dairy farming, cattle ranching, and Green Bay was probably the best fit for him because I don't think he would have done so well in a big city team. Green Bay was 83,000 people about the time he played, and once the season was over, he was back to farm country.
Probably fit him pretty well, didn't it?
Yeah, it was probably the best fit he could have had. And he discussed that many times in the past, talking about how the Packers were just a great fit.
Right. So he played for the Packers from 66 to 76. And you answered my question of why he went to Minnesota and not Wisconsin. It was just, I guess, right there and wanted to stay home, huh?
Yeah, he, of course, we're talking the 60s. 62 he graduated, so, recruiting and all the tools they have now, from anywhere from digital, videos on the internet to, the whole way they track things, that really wasn't part of the game back then. And, it was hard for a small town guy to really get noticed. And just a few colleges were interested in the Gophers were one of them. They had seen him on a highlight film of a different player, actually. They'd seen him in the background on a highlight film, and they basically said, we want this guy, and then they recruited him.
So when he went to the Packers, he ended up being a 5-time Pro Bowler, wasn't he?
Yeah, he 5 Pro Bowls he was elected to. He played in 4. 1 he had surgery, and he was on 7 or 8 All-Pro teams during his career in total.
Wow, that's crazy. Now, Lombardi being hired in 59, he won the NFL West in 60, and with his religious beliefs, the Green Bay community dubbed him as the Pope. This guy never had a losing season. That's an incredible feat right there. He won the 66 and 67 NFL championship. Super Bowls 1 and 2 he was the winner of. Now, your dad was part of the Ice Bowl, which, for those not up on their history, was December 31st, 67, and undoubtedly they've seen a clip of it somewhere. It was against Dallas, minus 13 degrees. What was your dad's thoughts on playing in that game?
Well, it actually got much colder than that as the game wore on. And with the wind chill, it was, I can't remember exactly, but 40, 50 below wind chill. So it was, his recollection, it was pretty miserable, And they didn't have the clothes that they have now. You didn't have the warm Under Armour clothes and the warm gloves you have. And, guys were literally burning themselves on the Nipco heaters that they had along the sidelines, because they were so frozen. They were starting to smell their flesh burn as they're trying to warm up and keep warm. So, what's
the smell of that hair I hear? I smell over here.
That's Rick. That's literally what my dad described it. People would start smelling this hair, and you couldn't feel your fingers and feet because they were half frozen. So you knew you were too close to the heater when you started smelling the hair burn.
Oh, that's hilarious. Hey guys, if you just tuned in, we have Brad Gillingham on the air, who is the son of Gail Gillingham. Gail is in the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame. He played for Vince Lombardi, the man that the Super Bowl trophy is named after. With this week being Super Bowl week, we found it only fitting to do something on Lombardi and have Brad on the air. So your dad played in Super Bowl I, which was at the LA Coliseum against Kansas City.
Yeah, he really stepped into a fortunate thing with the Packers. His rookie year was Super Bowl I, and then of course his second year was Super Bowl II. So right at the start of his career, he played in 2 Super Bowls and won 2 Super Bowls.
Uh-huh. So that was 67. How old were you then? Couldn't have been too old.
Yeah, I was
5?
Just an infant for Super Bowl. Less than a year, 1 or 2 years old for both.
So who is the oldest?
So no memories from my end.
Right. Now, who's the oldest out of yourself, Wade and Carl?
Well, my brother Carl is the oldest. He's 1 year older than I am.
Okay. So he wouldn't remember that much either.
Of course, he was very young too.
Right.
But as Dad's career progressed, his last year we were in 5th, 6th grade. So I got lots of memories of when he played, but none from the early years.
Right. So they played in Super Bowl II, which was in Miami, the Orange Bowl, winning 33-14 against Oakland. Now the interesting thing is comparing it to nowadays, that in that first Super Bowl, Green Bay won a purse of $15,000 and KC was awarded $7,500 per player. My, how things have changed, huh?
yeah, their salaries were around that area too. Players weren't making these multi-million-dollar contracts. They were, $20,000, $30,000 a year back in that day. So that $15,000 bonus for winning the Super Bowl went a long ways.
Yeah, I was going to say, salaries weren't what they are now, so there was probably some incentive to gain that extra little bit, huh?
Yeah, I think everything they could get. There were, I can remember stories, and of course, reading it now of, a lot of the players had to have off-season jobs, and some were in the National Guard. They're sure has changed as far as financially, and over time.
Yeah, and I can bet these guys now, if they get knocked out of the playoffs, part of them want to go on and win and everything, but an even bigger part is like, yeah, all right, I'm ready to back it up. I've been practicing since July. Let's call it today. So what do you remember from those years that he played, or some of maybe even the stories that your dad might have recalled?
Well, I can remember just a lot of his training. My dad was a real pioneer in the NFL in strength training, lifting weights, and of course in the 60s and 70s there weren't Anytime Fitnesses or Snap Fitnesses or any of these gyms that we're seeing today. So living in a small town, all of his training was in the house.
Uh-huh.
So he always had his weight rack set up either in the basement or the garage, and that's where he would train. And he trained very heavy. He was really a very strong man, and so those are some good memories of watching him lift. And I can remember times my older brother and I, we'd go out in the country with him in his pickup, and he'd tell us to behave ourselves, and off he'd run down a county road, and he'd disappear, and a little while later we'd see him come running back, and that was his conditioning. He'd haul us out in the country, and he'd take off down the road a couple miles and run back. So,
did he ever return with a deer on his shoulder or anything like that?
I think he would have probably liked to, but
you guys will hunt anything up there, won't you?
Yeah, that was really our big family things that we did with Dad. Of course, we called him the old man. That's what he liked to have us call him, the old man. But did a lot of lifting weights with him and a lot of hunting.
So at a young age, I'm sure he gave the speech of, hey, don't touch them weights, you're going to hurt yourself, right?
Not him, but that's what he heard. When he was even at the University of Minnesota, he was still in that era early on in his career there, where they were basically running the football players out of the weight room. No lifting, you become muscle bound. And about the time he left, they started getting more into lifting weights. But back in the 60s, there was a lot of misconceptions, and he realized early on that if he was going to go to battle, he better be as big as he can. So he really got into training.
At what age did he allow you guys to start picking up weights?
I got pictures of me and my brothers lifting weights with him. We're in the living room. He's sitting in the chair in his pajamas, and we're doing cleans at age 4 and 5 years old.
Oh, that's funny.
He had us lifting a little bit from the earliest memories. But we really didn't get into it real heavy until high school.
Right.
And at that time, it was more in preparation for our other sports we played. And then after high school, then we started training to specifically be strong for strength athletics. But
sure. Will you watch the Super Bowl this coming Sunday?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It'd be a better game if the Packers would have be playing in it. There'd be of more interest in the house. But
yeah, a lot of us here.
It's still going to be a great game between the Falcons and the Patriots. Should be really entertaining.
Yeah, a lot of us here, we're pulling for Green Bay. Now, here's something interesting. Everybody is always asking about what the halftime show is. For the very first Super Bowl that your dad was in, you ready for this? The halftime show featured trumpeter Al Hurt, the marching bands from University of Arizona, 300 pigeons and 10,000 balloons. Talk about going overboard on the entertainment.
I don't know if you watched that last year, but NFL Films had put together, it had to compile a series of films to put together a Super Bowl I film. Remember that? It was about this time last year.
I watched the game, but I didn't get to catch that.
So they had Super Bowl I on the NFL Network. It was right about this time last year, and it was really kind of cool because my daughter had a basketball game, and so I didn't get the chance to watch it, the first playing of it. And my older brother Carl and younger brother Wade and my cousin Brian, that's traveled a lot with us with lifting, they were all watching the game in separate locations, and they started texting me when I was at the basketball game, and you would have swore that the game was live. They were, boy, the old man really knocked him down.
Oh, that's
they were
great.
getting into it. Like, I wonder who's going to win. Of course, the game is 50 years old, but they had a good time with it, and that's kind of the difference. It took 50 years before they really could get that whole film together.
Right. And so the big topic for Super Bowl Sunday will also be the snacks. Did your dad have, what was his nutritional plan?
He was back in the day of, if you want to gain weight, you drink some 3-2 beer and you eat some Fritos.
Whole lot of steak, whole lot of milk, whole lot of beer and Fritos, huh?
Yeah, beer, Fritos, and steak.
Oh, that's crazy. That's hilarious.
He got more into diet later on in the as he got out of football, because then we started getting into the era of GNC and the protein shakes and vitamins and supplements. But that whole thing wasn't really around in the 60s and 70s.
Right. So, out of your brothers Carl, Wade, and yourself, how many of you guys played football?
Well, surprisingly, none of us really played. We played some early on in high school and junior high, but my dad really didn't push us to play football, and we were all in basketball. And all three of us had real nice careers in basketball in high school, and that was kind of where we put our efforts, basketball and track. It just something he really didn't push us to want to do, and we were very competitive in those other sports, but we just didn't really go the route of football.
Right. Well, and what's funny is if you grow up around it, it kind of sometimes works the other way. Why do you want to do any more of that? You've grown up watching it.
Yeah, you grow up and you see your dad after games, and he's on the couch for a day or two recovering from a game, and he's got a bottle of Solarcane or Americane sitting there, and he's got his tweezers out, and he's kind of pulling the remains of his toenails out of his feet and spraying his abrasions down with Solarcane, and a couple bags of ice on his knees and shoulders, and it doesn't really look like a whole heck of a lot of fun.
Yeah, sounds like a great time to me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and with the powerlifting, my son grew up around it, watching it, running meets and every other thing, and because he had to, and this is what we did, and has absolutely no interest in lifting, and I get it. Why would he want to do any more? He's been around it all of his life.
Yeah.
The girl on the other hand, go ahead.
That whole route of powerlifting and competing internationally, that was always kind of a dream of mine. When I was growing up, I loved football and basketball and stuff, but I loved watching like World Cup skiing and just dreaming about it, to France and Austria and Italy, and they're on the Bavarian Alps, and they're skiing. And by competing internationally for many years, that kind of fulfilled that dream of mine.
Yeah. Now,
traveling the world and seeing those places.
Did your dad ever say, was he on Lombardi's good side, bad side, or indifferent, kind of neutral?
Well, I think, he really respected Lombardi as a coach. And, my dad grew up, small town guy, son of a farmer, and his father was very demanding of him, expected 100% out of him. And so I think he was able to handle Lombardi's coaching because of his, how he grew up, because he said Lombardi, he expected 100% all the time, perfection. And, it was, I think it was fairly easy transition for Dad that way because that's how he grew up.
Right. It's kind of instilled in him, wasn't it?
So sometimes the greatest coaches that have the most success maybe aren't always the funnest to play for, but I know my dad had a 100% respect for Vince Lombardi.
Right.
Lots of respect for him.
So as your dad got older, while he was still alive, did he enjoy coming over for Super Bowl parties and stuff like that? Did you guys?
No, he really didn't get into the Super Bowl party mode. He was more, have a buddy or have a few of us over, family, and have a few beers and watch the game by himself. He really was kind of an introverted person that way. He enjoyed people, but when it come to stuff like watching the big game, it was usually just a couple of people in the room.
Yeah, kind of
like. Really didn't get into the whole Super Bowl party aspect.
Kind of low key.
I know one time the Packers, I think it was the last time they were, I can't remember the dates right now, but offhand, it was a few years back there in the Super Bowl. And my wife said, "Yeah, we should bring the girls up and watch the game with your dad." And I said, "No, I don't know. I don't know if that's a good place for women and children." Watching the Packers play in the Super Bowl with Dad, he still really got into football.
Oh, I bet. I could see that. Hey, guys, if you've just tuned in, we have Brad Gillingham on the line. He is the son of Gail Gillingham, who played for Vince Lombardi. He is also a member of the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame. This week being Super Bowl week, we figured we'd have somebody on that had a little bit of a connection to Vince Lombardi. Gail was in a couple Super Bowls. Brad is also an IPF Hall of Fame powerlifter and multi-time national and world champion powerlifter. Brad, how is training going nowadays? I know you had a little bit of a health scare this past year.
Well, I'm just kind of getting back into it. Not getting any younger. Still love lifting. Still love training. But I had gotten a blood clot from a long international trip back from Australia. Just didn't move around enough on the plane. It was one of those things, and that's definitely slowed me down. But I'm back into training. I love training. A couple, 2-3 times a week, and I'm not sure, if I'll win or if I'll get back into competing. But I know I'll be training for as long as I can. So.
Yeah, and your dad trained right up to the end, didn't he?
Yeah, he loved lifting. That was his thing. He loved lifting, and he wouldn't miss his workouts. Typically 3 days a week he was out in his garage lifting weights. So, big part of his life, right to the end.
Right. Yeah, I say, you know what? You have nothing to prove. Nobody would look down on you if you said, "I'm done. I'm just going to lift and coach and do whatever and have a good time." Because, brother, you've certainly earned it.
Well, I appreciate that, Rick. It's been a great ride. Able to travel the world, travel the country, lifting weights, and many of those international trips were with some of my brothers, one or both of them. My dad would come with on all those trips and coach me, and able to see a lot of things just by lifting weights. So it's sure been a good ride.
Give us an idea of the countries that you competed in.
Well, I made about 30 international trips. A lot of them were kind of in that Eastern Europe, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Ukraine, Russia, all over Europe, Italy, Finland, Sweden several times. More trips to Europe, and then
Japan for the World Games,
South Africa a couple times, and Japan and Taiwan, and I was really able to see a lot of the world.
What was your favorite country to compete at or visit?
Well, that's tough one to answer. They're all kind of unique. I really like Sweden. Sweden's a great country, and there several times. And the food is great in the Czech Republic and Slovakia. Very good food. And Australia really was an interesting country. Maybe Sweden might be was one of the nicer countries I went to.
Uh-huh. And if you could recall right off the top of your head, what was your top squat?
870.
870. And how about the bench?
Bench was 633.
And the deadlift, was it the 881?
881.
At the Arnold?
Yeah, I did 81 a couple times. Once at the Arnold, and I did it in Potchefstroom, South Africa, at the World Championships in 2010.
I knew the guy announcing that 881 at the Arnold.
Yeah, he's a kind of a crazy character.
Yeah.
A couple crazy characters there.
He's got a face for radio, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I think he runs the Rick Fowler Show, I believe.
That's right. What a great time and an honor to be on the stage with you, to be part of that.
Yeah, those were good times, Rick. You announced a lot of times when I lifted, and then you used to hold the best meets in the country. We had St. Louis there, and many times I competed down there at nationals. You probably can remember more than I can, but I think
you were down here
in the nationals 3 or 4 times there.
Well, I think you
had run.
You were probably here in 96, 99, and 07.
07, yep.
Yeah, 99.
In 07, I had quite a battle with local guy, King Louie.
That's right.
Lewis, and I went right down to the last deadlift, and just a great guy from the St. Louis area.
I just seen the King over the weekend. I seen him on Saturday. I don't see anybody too much just because I stay busy with everything I do. But Bill McDonough's son is going into the Army, and they had a great big going away party for Colin. So I seen a lot of the guys, and Jeff Lewis was one of them. And we talked about that meet coming down to the last deadlift.
Yeah, Jeff's always been a good friend, and sometimes you got to compete against your buddies, and you give it your all, and afterwards everybody shakes hands and it just appreciates the competition. That's a good thing about strength sports. It's really a fun way to compete.
We laughed about one of Jeff's squats when he got turned down because he didn't take it deep enough, and it wasn't that he got red lighted. It was actually what Pat Rankin said on the microphone that made the referees all mad. Jeff comes up with 930 or whatever it was, and a lot of people thought it was deep enough, and when he got turned down, Pat Rankin, who you're very familiar with, says right on the microphone, "That was a bad call."
Rankin, Pat Rankin.
Yep, he's a pastor and really doing well. Got a couple churches.
Yeah, he's just another great guy, and really has contributed a lot to the sport of powerlifting, just like you have, Rick. And I always enjoy seeing Pat too. And Jeff is such a mammoth guy, a huge guy. I mean, I think he might have been around the 500-pound mark at the time of that meet. And unfortunately, his legs are so big that it just, I think sometimes that worked against him with squats because he just is so massive. It's hard to judge.
Tough to judge. That's right. Hey, are you still doing the grip gauntlet for the GNC?
We haven't done it for a while, but I think it still will become. It's still out there. I could see us doing it again for another show. My brother Wade, obviously, he kind of heads that up with all of his grip strength, but he still is really strong with in that department, and Carl still trains quite a bit too. So that was always a fun thing. Three of us would put that grip gauntlet together, and we'd have thousands of people over a weekend trying it. Really a cool thing.
And for those not familiar with it, the Grip Gauntlet, it was a demonstration at the sports festivals that GNC sponsored. They would bring Brad Wade and Carl Gillingham in, and everything they did was based on grip, and they would either lift something, bend it, tear it, in a lot of cases, and it was just an unbelievable thing, and it included probably phone books, horseshoes, all of the old-time strongman feats of strength. Pretty good stuff.
Yeah, we'd have this blob, which is half of a 100-pound York dumbbell that you'd have to pick up with one hand, and we'd work that in there. And we had a Rolling Thunder, which is a one-handed deadlift with a thick revolving handle, and of course we'd have the grippers. You'd have to squeeze the gripper down, and we'd line them up non-stop all day. They'd come up and give it a try. Generally they couldn't make it, and so we'd give them a free T-shirt, and and up would be the next one. And usually if we had a couple thousand people try it over the weekend, sometimes we'd get a couple that would get it done, but everybody had fun with it. It was a good way to spend a couple weeks at a fitness festival.
Right.
A couple days, not weeks.
Seemed like a couple of weeks by Sunday, right?
Yeah, especially that Arnold. We went to Arnold many times. I think maybe 12 of those. For those that aren't familiar with the Arnold, there's about 200,000 people there over 3 days. So when you got done working at the Arnold for 3 days, it took 2 weeks to recover.
Yeah, you're not kidding. You're not kidding. And it was never easy to get a good meal there. You would always get tired of eating bars and drinking shakes.
Yeah, just the crowds are so massive that the lines are so long. It was hard ever to get anywhere. Use the bathrooms, get a meal, just unwind and relax was difficult.
Right. Hey, listen, before
great place to see people.
No, well, you are not kidding. I had the pleasure of interviewing Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger a couple of times, and those are serious pinch me moments when you're talking to these guys.
Yeah, you're big time in there, Rick. And with Stallone and Schwarzenegger, that's I bet you never would have figured you'd be interviewing them years ago, did you?
No. And you know what? When Arnold come around the corner and I was standing next to him, you know what my thoughts were? First, it was, dude, you need to trim the eyebrows. He had these Austrian caterpillars on his forehead. But seriously, I've never panicked like that in my life, not because I'm talking to Arnold, but because I've never had that many people flocked around me. There must have been 1,000 people immediately around us, and it was a crazy thing almost.
Yeah, the nice thing, Arnold, I think, truly liked to talk to athletes and people at that show, but with the crowds, it was difficult. But a few years I competed in the strongman events, and then even competing in the deadlift events, you'd go back into restricted area where there was nobody allowed, the normal public wasn't there. And so if you'd see Arnold back in the restricted area, then he'd really be sociable, come up and want to talk with people, because then the crowds weren't around, and he was able to do that. But
right.
Normally, I mean, how'd you like to be him? I mean,
oh yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
it's very difficult that anytime you go anywhere that you just are surrounded by people.
Yeah, you wouldn't even be able to use the restroom.
Yeah, it'd be tough to be that popular.
Right. Hey, listen, before we cut you loose, I'd like to have you record a show ID, if you wouldn't mind saying, this is Brad Gillingham, IPF Hall of Fame powerlifter, and you're listening to The Rick Fowler Show.
This is Brad Gillingham, IPF Hall of Fame powerlifter, and you're listening to The Rick Fowler Show.
Oh, he nails it the first time, ladies and gentlemen. How about that? That was great. So I have 3 questions for you, and I ask this to all of my guests. So they are, first one, what does Brad Gillingham listen to? What is on your iPhone or your music list?
Well, I kind of change a lot depending on the situation. So if I'm in the gym, I'm generally listening to some old 80s rock, Motley Crue, Ozzy, AC/DC. If I get out of the gym, a lot of times driving around, I'm listening to more of the oldies, 70s and 80s, or the country western music. Depends what kind of mood I'm in, but in the gym, it's it's the hair bands in the gym, and it's either country or easy listening in the afternoon.
All right. Last meal or meals, if you're on death row, what would Brad Gillingham order up?
Oh, boy. I think I'd have a nice piece of, I think I'd have a surf and turf. Probably a nice fillet and a nice big lobster tail. And probably not worry about how much butter I was putting on it.
Yeah, you'd soak it, right?
Soak it in butter, yep.
That's right. All right, and finally, the one person, living or dead, that you'd like to either meet or see again. And
well, I'd probably have to say my dad.
Yeah.
He passed away about 5 years ago, and boy, a chance to go talk to him again would be unbelievable.
You aren't kidding. That's a popular answer, and it's mine. I lost my dad when I was 9 years old, so absolutely.
Yeah, if we only knew things we want to say when people are in our presence, we'd say a lot more, wouldn't we?
We absolutely sure would. Hey, listen, I appreciate you calling in on the show. Guys, you've been listening to Brad Gillingham, who is an IPF Hall of Fame powerlifter, son of Gail Gillingham, who is in the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame, two-time Super Bowl champion, and played for Vince Lombardi. Brad, it's been great talking to you. Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Rick.
All right, buddy.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, guys. That was Brad Gillingham with a tremendous interview. We're going to go to some commercials, and we'll be right back with the Rick Fowler Show.
And that's a wrap.
Do you feel blame? Are you mad? Do you feel like woods about referendums? Get finished.
Want to play, then I'm getting the out of here.
Is it your celebration?
But it's much too late for goodbye. Yes, it's much too late for goodbye.
My old friend,
And listening to the Rick Fowler Show.
Radio. You found it. Total variety, talk, and music. Streaming live and available on demand. Go to RiotRadioRocks.com for the show schedule and all the info where you can tune in.